Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. For joining me everywhere else, you know how it is. We appreciate you on Twitter. We appreciate you on Facebook. To all my people who've been holding me down on Spotify, I appreciate it. If you're not following the show on Spotify, make sure that you go follow the show on Spotify. Spend yourself 15 to 30 minutes a morning, an afternoon, an evening, on your drive home, while you're making dinner, while you're watching the kids play on the swings. Spend 15 to 20 to 30 minutes with me a day. I really do appreciate it. I've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating. And not just for the sake of there's nothing to talk about, there's a ton to talk about, but that's why it bears repeating. Football is upon us. Preseason games are starting tonight. High school teams will begin playing scrimmages, and then next week probably real games in many places, especially in the South. And so when you think about how we look at players and we look at their impact, what they can and cannot do. I know a lot of people will tell you that, oh, well, these media personalities don't really have any power. They don't really affect anything. But if we're really being honest about it, the idea that we as consumers of sports and sports media can't see the difference of when we take an opinion of somebody that's supposed to be an expert. We take that opinion as fact. Why? Because we have been told that they are an expert. And when you're an expert in something, I won't say we're lazy. I won't say we're lazy. I'm just going to say that when it comes to what we've done, why would I go and question what's wrong with my motor in my car if a mechanic tells me that I have a head gasket blown? If the mechanic tells me that I need the oil change, I don't then go, oh no, the mechanic doesn't know what he's talking about. So now when we get into football analysts and someone who's being paid to be an analyst who has a background that says X, when they make a comment, that comment holds weight. And then it gets regurgitated by the people who are too lazy to look the thing up and form an opinion for themselves. So anything that I think about comes from the standpoint of we as a people, when we are consuming our media. And you have to excuse me for being kind of spacey, because it's like, I know sometimes you know exactly what you want to say, but you don't want it to come out wrong. And I want to make sure I get this right. So you want to know the reason why Lamar Jackson is hated on so much? Excuse me. He's not hated. Why he's hated on so much? Because the perception of Lamar Jackson is that he's not playing the position that would allow him to be the maximum of what he is. That's the perception. It is an underlying thing in the back of people's minds that Lamar Jackson, as a wide receiver, is a Hall of Famer, is a Hall of Fame level talent as a wide receiver. And why? might you add. Why is that the situation? Because Bill Polian told us that was the situation. Bill Polian told us that Lamar Jackson would be a better wide receiver than he was a quarterback. And he told us that after we watched Lamar Jackson put together two of the most fantastic back-to-back seasons as a quarterback in college we had ever seen. His words, and then the echo of those words from other people who said, oh, look at the low-hanging fruit. Bill Polian, a Hall of Fame GM, a Hall of Fame personnel guy, says that Lamar Jackson's not a quarterback, so he must not really be a quarterback. And ever since then, Lamar Jackson and the people who ride for Lamar Jackson have been fighting against this implanted idea in the heads of people who watch football, people who listen to football, people who talk about football, that maybe Lamar Jackson isn't what he should be. They keep wanting, if we act, and here's the crazy part about it, right? We pick and choose when we want wins to be a stat for quarterbacks. So anytime you bring up the fact that Lamar Jackson's a winner, they change the narrative and go to the playoffs. Meanwhile, they don't even mention the fact that Justin Herbert, who is supposed to be a top 5 quarterback in this league without doing anything, by the way, they do that while telling us that Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback, and he does not win. He can't even elevate his team full of talent to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson takes a team with some talent, not full of talent, definitely not full of the receiving talent that Justin Herbert has, and he takes them to the playoffs. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Lamar Jackson took over a team that was destined for a top 5 pick in the draft. They took over a team where the coach was on the hot seat about to get fired because of how bad they played. He was on a team where they had a quarterback that they paid a lot of money, was not actually getting the job done. And he took that team in the last half of the season all the way to the playoffs. That doesn't matter. That doesn't register. Why? Because in people's minds, they have this idea that Lamar Jackson is really playing a position that he should not be playing. And because we have this perception now, it makes it more difficult to shake that perception. It makes it more difficult to shake the perception when that's what we have put in front of us for everybody to see. So now, every time Lamar Jackson does something, there's a yeah, but. It's not just accepted. Lamar Jackson went from being a guy who supposedly should be playing wide receiver and not quarterback to a guy who has no room to grow. He's not allowed to grow. He's not allowed to get better incrementally, like Josh Allen was allowed to do. Because he came out and lit the world on fire from day one, he's not allowed to then progress in his skills, progress in what he does. He's never been as bad as Josh Allen. He's never been as bad as Josh Allen. Never. He's never been as bad. He's never been as bad as Joe Burrow. He's never been as bad as Justin Herbert. He doesn't know what that level of mediocrity is like. He's never been there. He doesn't know what it's like to be at Oregon, middling around in the middle because you can't hit wide open receivers. He doesn't know what it's like to be at LSU and look lost out there until you finally start to get it together. Oh, and you're surrounded by maybe one of the best collections of talent in the history of the game. He doesn't know what it's like to be at Wyoming, let alone to be at Wyoming throwing like the ball in the dirt or throwing the ball 25 yards over the head of wide receivers. He doesn't understand that life because he has been a ball player from day one. And so with him being a ball player and the expectations that come with being a ball player of his caliber, yeah, his expectations should be different, right? It should be. But it doesn't mean that these get passes and these don't. It doesn't mean that these get passes and these don't. Like this idea that we can pick and choose who gets the benefit of the doubt is laughable. Anytime you bring up Lamar Jackson's win percentage, people go, yeah, but. And then they turn around and say, oh, well, Josh Allen has a winning record in the playoffs. Well, when you've only been to the playoffs twice and you win at least one game in the playoffs, there's a chance that you're going to have a winning record in the playoffs, right? That's how it works. When you play in the AFC and you play in the AFC East, at least this AFC East, where Miami is not good and the Jets are trash and the Patriots are meh, as opposed to playing in the AFC North where you're going through the Steelers and the Browns, and you're going through the Steelers, the Browns, and the Bengals, who all are good at the same time. That's different. You can't just like ignore that. That's not how this works. Every time we listen to those words, every time you wonder whether or not Lamar Jackson is worthy of that gigantic contract, ask yourself, what are you basing that off of? Oh, is it injury? Because there have been other quarterbacks who've been injured and still been paid. It's playoffs. Okay, well, there's other quarterbacks who have not even reached the playoffs. Oh, well, is it because you're afraid that he's going to get hurt? Well, who does that? Who bases it off of fear of injury? If you're afraid your quarterback is going to get hurt, guess what you should probably do? You should probably build a team around him to insulate him from injury. Lamar Jackson led the league in touchdown passes, yet we sit back and act like this man can't throw the ball. Last year, in 12 games, he threw for more yards than he threw for in 15 games the year before, and yet we sit around and act as if this man can't throw the ball. All of our perceptions of Lamar Jackson are based off of biases that have nothing to do with what he's done on the field. You say, oh, well, he's got to be more accurate. You say he's got to be more accurate. And yet, at the same time, don't admit to the fact that he's never really been inaccurate. For whatever the completion percentage is worth, his completion percentage is above 60%. But that is better than back at a time when no quarterback, most any quarterback was rolling around with 60% completions. So you're telling me because he completes 60 to 61, 62%, he's worse than the guy that completes 67, 65? What are we basing this accuracy thing off of? Because I can show you plays from every quarterback, Tom Brady included, Aaron Rodgers included, where you go, that ball was never going to hit that receiver that they were trying to throw it to. So why do we always constantly see clips of Lamar Jackson and errant throws? They do it to other quarterbacks. I'm not saying he's the only one they do it to, but it just seems to me weird that we see highlights. When people want to make the point, they show highlights of Lamar Jackson throwing passes that are not good. They show highlights of Lamar Jackson running, and then they give you the narrative and call him a running quarterback. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a running quarterback. They're just quarterbacks, and he just happens to be able to run. But Josh Allen just happens to be able to run and runs a similar style to Lamar. They've got him running QB power and QB lead. Nobody calls him a running quarterback. Joe Burrow can run. Nobody calls him a running quarterback. Justin Herbert can run. Nobody calls him a running quarterback. Kyler Murray, some people might call him a running back. A running quarterback. Some people might. Hint, hint. Tua, he can run. Nobody calls him a running quarterback. They talk all the other stuff about him. We can go around the league. Aaron Rodgers. Nobody calls Aaron Rodgers a running quarterback. You're penalizing him because he's good at a skill. You're penalizing him because he happens to have an ability that nobody else has. He has a level of ability that nobody else has, and that's what you're using to diminish him. There's a reason why we look at him and we look at these contracts negotiations and we say, oh, well, I don't know if I would give him. There's a reason why they do that. And the reason why is because there's a stigma attached to him that has nothing to do with him. When he was in college, he was one of the top passers in the nation. Simultaneously, he was one of the top rushers. If you took away all his rushing numbers, he was still one of the top 5 to 10 passers in the league. In the NCAA. And that's without having one legitimate receiving option. And the only guy he had that played in the league was Reggie Bonifido or something. One guy who was a running back receiver hybrid, tall guy, running back receiver hybrid that got a cup of coffee in the NFL. Thank you to my boy at Lord Don't Lose, Mr. Jackson, for reminding me that was the one dude. That was the one dude. I think it was the Reggie Bonifido or I don't know how you pronounce his last name. But I'm not even sure it's, Reggie Bonifant. Excuse me, Bonifant. He was the only guy. Who I can remember on that team that Lamar Jackson had that played in the NFL. He's a running back, but at Louisville, they used him all over the place. That was it. That's what he was working with. That's what he had. And so now we sit back and we watch as this man negotiates for himself his contract, and everybody like rags him for this. You don't think that somewhere along the line there are agents out there that are throwing shade out there to media members? We already know that there's some media members that are in bed with agents, that they are leaking information from agents. Why have you not heard anything about this Lamar Jackson contract? Why have you not heard any details come out? Why? Because there's no agents involved. There are no agents involved. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, well, maybe if the agents involved, they would have leaked something that would have got the contract done already. Yeah, maybe. But what if you don't want to operate in that mode? 728. What if you don't want to operate in that mode? What if you don't want that to happen? If you don't want to operate in that mode, if you don't want to operate where the public knows and you have to become the villain in order to get your money, then maybe you don't behave in that manner. But if your agent decides that they want to behave in that manner, then you are left to clean up the pieces. The agent's not the one that takes the podium, right? Kyler Murray's agent isn't on the podium trying to understand why he allowed that stupid stipulation that he has to do homework to go into his contract. His agent just has to sit back and count the money. Lamar Jackson handles all his business. He's done it. When people told him that he wasn't good enough to play for them, he went somewhere and proved it. Then he came into the league where everybody said he would not be able to do what he did in college. He walked right in and did exactly what he's done in college. And now, when it's time for him to get his world-changing money, his $250 million or more worth of money that you've given to other quarterbacks who have not achieved what he's achieved, we come back to, is he worth it? Can you give him that much money? What about ... Yeah, but ... Yeah, but ... We could, but it's always a but. There's always a reason. There's always something different. And if you trace the origin of it back, it goes all the way back to that time where that guy said that thing about that man that made everybody believe or made everybody question whether or not he could do this at this level. When somebody comes out who's respected as a GM and says, hey, this prospect has a chance to be the next Peyton Manning. He has I have the highest grade on this guy that I've ever had as a quarterback. That changes the perception of everybody. So even when that guy fails, people go, oh, well, that must have been because of. Andrew Luck is not a Hall of Fame quarterback, but everybody acts as if Andrew Luck was this unicorn that got away. Andrew Luck did not achieve anything as an NFL quarterback. He had a ton of turnovers. He had a ton of turnovers in bad situations. You know what they did? They blamed the team. They blamed the organization. The same organization that put the pieces in place for Peyton Manning to be successful for years was the organization that they blamed for Andrew Luck not having as much success. Why? Because the perception was that Andrew Luck was this can't-miss prospect that was destined for the Hall of Fame. So he got every opportunity to be successful. He got every benefit of the doubt. The perception of Lamar Jackson is that Lamar Jackson's style cannot exist and last in the NFL. And so every time there's a bump in the road, there's a hot seat, told you. And that's why we find ourselves in this situation. You got to watch what you say. You have to watch what you say. You have to understand that words have power. I just had somebody on Twitter hit me up and say that they think I'm not credible because I said that Andrew Thomas wasn't the best tackle, hasn't been the best tackle out of the draft class. Then the dude had the nerve to say that I watch film. If I watch film and I claim that Wills played better than Thomas, then it's ridiculous. Said that he never has to hear anything that I say again just because of that one take. Because I didn't believe that one player had played up to the potential of where he was drafted. He can't listen to anything else I say. That's how finite it is, right? He's willing to make that off of one opinion on one topic on one player. A player that plays offensive line, not a quarterback. So imagine the impact that it has when you do it to a quarterback. We got to watch what we say. Because if we don't, we end up affecting people who may not know better. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. We do this thing a few times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree. But whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, you know what to do. Like, subscribe. Till next time, peace.